The day I gave him my last plate of food was the day I stopped believing in coincidence. The August heat in South Memphis pressed down like a hand holding your face underwater. I stood behind the counter of my small soul food spot on Lamar Avenue, wiping sweat from my neck with a dish towel that had seen better days. The lunch rush had thinned to a trickle, leaving me with aching feet, a half-empty tip jar, and the familiar weight of wondering if I'd make rent this month. LaToya's kitchen wasn't much, just a converted storefront with 6 tables, a grill that sputtered when it got too hot, and walls painted the color of sweet potato pie. But it was mine. Every crack in the linoleum, every mismatched chair, every handwritten menu board behind the counter represented 4 years of waking up at 4 a.m., of burning my fingers on hot grease, of praying over pots and believing that good food could change someone's day. My mother taught me that before she passed. "Baby," she'd say, stirring her famous collard greens, "you put love in the pot, and people taste it. Food ain't just about filling stomachs. It's about feeding souls." I thought about her words as I scraped the last bit of mac and cheese from the serving tray. It was 2:47 p.m., and I had maybe 1 more hour before I could finally sit down. That's when he walked in. At first, I didn't look up, too busy counting what was left in the register, mentally calculating if I could order more chicken for tomorrow. But I felt him. You know that feeling when someone enters a room and the air shifts, like a pressure change before a storm? I lifted my eyes. He stood just inside the doorway, one hand resting on the frame like he was deciding whether to stay or leave. Tall, maybe 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out a faded Howard University t-shirt. His jeans were dusty, his sneakers worn down at the heels, and there was a tiredness in his face that went deeper than physical exhaustion. Dark brown skin, close-cropped hair, and eyes that held something I couldn't name yet. Sadness? Wisdom? Both? But what struck me most was how still he was. In a neighborhood where everyone moved with purpose, hustling, surviving, pushing forward, he stood there like a man who'd forgotten where he was going. "We're still open," I called out, my voice cutting through the thick silence. "Come on in." He hesitated. Then slowly he stepped inside. His movements were careful, measured, like someone used to taking up space but trying not to. He approached the counter and stopped about 3 feet away, studying the menu board above my head. I watched his eyes move across the words. Fried catfish plate, $12. Smothered chicken, $11. Meatloaf special, $10. "What's good?" he asked. His voice was deep, smooth, with an educated softness that didn't match his appearance. "Everything," I said with a smile I'd perfected over years of customer service. "But if you want my honest opinion, the smothered chicken will change your life. That's not marketing. That's a promise." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Smothered chicken it is. Want cornbread or roll with that?" "Cornbread. Sweet tea." He nodded. I wrote it down on my pad, then looked up. "That'll be $11. He reached into his pocket. His hand disappeared inside, searched, then froze. His entire body went rigid. I knew that freeze. I'd lived that freeze. His hand emerged empty. He checked his other pocket. Nothing. Then his back pockets. Still nothing. The color drained from his face, not from his skin, but from somewhere behind his eyes. I watched shame settle over him like a heavy coat. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I thought I had." He exhaled, shaking his head. "I apologize for wasting your time." He turned to leave. "Wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "Sit down." I said firmly. Ma'am, I can't. I said sit down. Slowly he turned back. Confusion flickered across his face. I pointed to the table by the window. That one's got the best breeze. I don't have any money, he said quietly, like he was confessing something shameful. Did I ask you for money? No, but... Then sit down. For a moment we locked eyes. Something passed between us, some understanding that went beyond words. He saw that I meant it, and maybe, just maybe, he saw that I understood. He sat. I turned back to my kitchen, my hands moving with practiced efficiency. Chicken from the warming tray, still hot and perfect. Mac and cheese, creamy and golden. Collard greens cooked slow with smoked turkey. Candied yams that gleamed like amber. Cornbread, buttery and still warm from the last batch. I piled that plate high. Not the regular portion, the somebody needs this portion. When I set it in front of him, his eyes went wide. This is too much, he whispered. Then take some home. Ma'am. My name is Latoya, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. And you are. He paused, then said softly, Marcus. Well, Marcus, I'm gonna sit here while you eat because if I don't, you're gonna try to leave and we're not doing that today. Understood. He stared at me like I'd just spoken in another language. Then, to my surprise, his eyes glistened. Thank you, he whispered. You're welcome. Now eat before it gets cold. He picked up his fork with hands that trembled slightly. But the moment that first bite hit his tongue, something changed in his face. His eyes closed. His shoulders dropped. He chewed slowly, deliberately, like he was savoring not just the taste but the moment itself. This is incredible, he said, voice thick with emotion. I know, I said simply. As he ate, I studied him. The way he held his fork, refined, precise. The way he sat, back straight, elbows off the table. The way he dabbed his mouth with the napkin, gentle, practiced. This wasn't a man used to eating in places like mine. This was someone who'd fallen from somewhere higher. You always feed strangers for free? He asked between bites. Only the ones who look like they need it. And how do I look? I tilted my head, considering. Like someone who's been carrying something heavy for a long time. He stopped chewing, set down his fork, looked at me with those deep, unreadable eyes. You're perceptive, he said quietly. Comes with the territory. Feed people long enough, you learn to read hunger. And I don't just mean the stomach kind. He nodded slowly, then returned to eating. We sat in comfortable silence, me watching the street outside, him savoring every bite like it was his last meal. When he finished, he pushed back his chair and stood. Latoya, he said, I don't know what brought me to your door today, but I'm grateful it did. Where are you headed? I asked. He paused. Honestly, I don't know. Something in my chest tightened. You got somewhere to sleep tonight? I'll figure it out. Before I could stop myself, I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out 2 20s. Money I'd been saving for my electric bill. I pressed them into his hand. No, he said immediately, trying to give them back. I can't. Yes, you can. Get a room somewhere safe. Get a meal tomorrow. Get whatever you need. Latoya, this is too much. Marcus, I said, looking him dead in the eye. My mama used to say that kindness is never wasted. Maybe you'll pay it forward someday. Maybe you won't. Either way, I'm not losing sleep over $40. He stared at the bills in his hand, then at me. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. I won't forget this, he said, voice breaking. I promise you, I won't forget. I know you won't. He nodded once, then turned and walked out of my restaurant. I watched him disappear down Lamar Avenue, swallowed by the afternoon heat and the endless flow of Memphis traffic. I didn't know his last name. I didn't know where he came from. I didn't know that the man I just fed was Marcus Elijah Cole, venture capitalist, tech mogul, and one of the 50 richest black men in America. I didn't know that he'd walked away from a $300 million deal that morning because the weight of his world had finally crushed him. I didn't know that he'd stripped off his Tom Ford suit and his Bentley, changed into old clothes from his college days, and walked for hours through the Memphis neighborhoods where he'd grown up, trying to remember who he was before the money, before the fame, before the emptiness. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that I'd fed a hungry man, and that somehow felt like enough. 2 weeks later, I didn't expect to see him again. That's the thing about feeding strangers in Memphis. You give them a meal, a moment of grace, and they disappear back into the current of life. You don't expect returns. You don't expect thank you notes. You just hope they're somewhere safe, somewhere better. But Marcus came back. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind where the heat makes everything shimmer like a mirage. I was in the back kitchen, elbow deep in a pot of gumbo, when I heard the bell above the door chime. Be right there, I called out. Take your time, a familiar voice replied. I froze, turned, walked slowly to the front. There he was, but different. The worn sneakers were gone, replaced by crisp white ones that looked fresh out of the box. The faded Howard shirt had been swapped for a simple black t-shirt that fit him perfectly. His beard was trimmed. His eyes were clearer, and something about the way he held himself, straighter, stronger, made my breath catch. Marcus, I said, wiping my hands on my apron. Hey, LaToya. He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. I came back for that smothered chicken. I blinked. You came back? Promised I wouldn't forget. Didn't I? A warmth spread through my chest. Well, have a seat. I'll get you fixed up. Actually, he said, glancing around the empty restaurant, I was hoping we could talk first, if you have time. Something in his tone made my heart skip. Everything okay? More than okay. He gestured to the table by the window, the same one he'd sat at before. Please. I untied my apron slowly, hung it on the hook, and joined him. We sat across from each other, the afternoon light cutting golden stripes across the table between us. I owe you an explanation, he began. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped. That day I walked in here, I was at the lowest point of my life. Not because I was broke, though I genuinely didn't have any money on me that day, but because I'd lost myself. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. I grew up about 6 blocks from here, he continued, gesturing vaguely toward the window. Single mom, tiny apartment, food stamps, the whole thing. But my mama pushed me. Scholarships, internships, college. I got out, made something of myself. Built a tech company from my dorm room. Sold it for millions. Built another one. Sold that too. My eyes widened slightly, but I didn't interrupt. Before I knew it, I was on magazine covers, Forbes lists, speaking at conferences. Everyone wanted a piece of me, investors, celebrities, politicians, and I gave it to them. I gave away pieces of myself until there was nothing left but the image. He paused, jaw tightening. I forgot why I started, forgot what mattered, forgot who I was. So you walked away, I said softly. I walked away, he confirmed. That morning, I left a board meeting in the middle of a $300 million negotiation, changed clothes in my car, threw my phone in the glove compartment, and just walked, like I used to when I was a kid and things got too heavy. And you ended up here. He nodded. Divine intervention, my mama would say. Your mama sounds wise. She was. His voice caught. She passed 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. Thank you. He cleared his throat. She used to feed people too. Every Sunday after church, she'd cook for whoever needed a meal. Didn't matter if they could pay. Didn't matter if they'd pay her back. She just gave. I felt tears prick my eyes. She sounds like my mama. Maybe that's why. He trailed off, then smiled. Maybe that's why I felt safe here. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of loss and memory hanging between us like incense. So what now? I asked. You going back to that world? I am, he said, but differently. I'm stepping down as CEO, bringing in someone else to run the day-to-day. I'm starting a foundation, investing in small businesses in neighborhoods like this, places that got left behind while people like me got rich. My heart swelled. Marcus, that's beautiful. It's what my mama would have wanted. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Which brings me to why I'm really here. He slid it across the table. I stared at it. What's this? Open it. With trembling fingers, I lifted the flap. Inside was a check. My breath left my body. $50,000. Marcus, I whispered. What is this? A thank you. And an investment. I can't. Yes, you can. His voice was firm but gentle. Latoya, you gave me $40 when you needed it yourself. You gave me a meal when you didn't know if you'd make rent. You gave me dignity when I had nothing. He leaned forward. This isn't charity. This is me investing in someone who's been doing the work all along. Tears spilled down my cheeks. This is too much. It's not nearly enough. He smiled. Use it to expand. Hire help. Fix that grill that keeps sputtering. Whatever you need. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. There's one more thing, he said, pulling out a business card. I'd like you to be the first partner in my foundation. Help me identify other restaurants, other businesses, other people doing what you're doing. Be my eyes on the ground. I stared at the card. Cole Foundation feeding communities, building legacies. Why me? I finally managed to ask. Because you remind me why any of this matters. His eyes held mine. Because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you have a gift for seeing people really seeing them. And because... He paused, vulnerability flashing across his face. Because I trust you. Something shifted in the air between us. Something that went beyond gratitude, beyond business. Okay, I whispered. I'll do it. His face broke into the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. 3 months later, the expansion happened faster than I dreamed. New equipment, new staff, a second location in the works. But the heart of Latoya's kitchen stayed the same. Every Tuesday, we fed anyone who walked through the door, payment optional. Marcus funded it all through the foundation. But more than the money, more than the business growth, something else had bloomed. Marcus came by every week. Sometimes for lunch, sometimes just to talk. We'd sit at that same table by the window, and slowly, carefully, we peeled back the layers of our lives. He told me about the pressure of being a Black excellence poster child, the isolation of wealth, the fake friends and faker business partners. I told him about rebuilding after my mother's death, About the ex-husband who said I'd never amount to anything. About the nights I cried in my car before opening the restaurant, terrified I'd fail. We shared our wounds, and somehow in the sharing they began to heal. One evening in November, after I'd closed up shop, Marcus was helping me mop the floors, something he'd started doing without asking, just showing up and grabbing a mop like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You don't have to do this," I said, laughing as he nearly knocked over a bucket. "I know," he said, grinning, "but your mama fed people. My mama fed people. Seems right that I should know how to clean up after." I shook my head, smiling. "You're something else, Marcus Cole." He stopped mopping, set the handle against the wall, walked over to where I stood. "LaToya," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" My heart started racing. "Sure." That day I walked in here. Did you know? Even for a second. Did you suspect who I was? I thought about it honestly. No. I saw a man who needed a meal. That's all. And if you had known, if I'd walked in wearing a suit, driving a Bentley, would you have treated me the same? Probably not, I admitted. I probably would have been intimidated, kept my distance. He nodded slowly. That's why I didn't tell you, at first. And now I'm terrified. I blinked. Of what? That you'll think everything I feel for you is about gratitude. That you'll think I'm here because I owe you something. He stepped closer. LaToya, I need you to know that what started as gratitude became something else weeks ago. My breath caught. You make me laugh, he continued, voice rough with emotion. You challenge me. You see through my bullshit. You remind me who I wanted to be before the world told me who I had to be. He reached out, gently taking my hand. I'm not here because you fed me. I'm here because being around you feels like coming home. Tears blurred my vision. Marcus, I know this is complicated, he said quickly. I know my life is messy. I know people will talk, will say you're only with me for money, will make it ugly. If that's too much, if you need me to just be a friend, I'll respect that. But I had to tell you the truth. I looked at our hands, his large and dark, mine smaller and trembling. I thought about the journey that brought us here. The hunger, the hope, the healing. When I fed you that day, I said slowly, I wasn't trying to save you. I was just trying to be kind. But somewhere along the way, I looked up, meeting his eyes. You saved me too. His breath hitched. I spent so long feeling small, I continued. Feeling like I wasn't enough, wasn't doing enough, wasn't important enough. But you see me, not as a charity case, not as a good deed, just me. Because you're extraordinary, he whispered. So are you. I squeezed his hand. And yeah, it's complicated. Yeah, people will talk. But Marcus, I don't care. Hope blazed in his eyes. You don't. I care about this. I gestured between us. About what's real. About what we're building, not just the foundation, but this. He pulled me close and I let him. His arms wrapped around me, strong and sure, and I rested my head against his chest, hearing his heartbeat thunder beneath my ear. Thank you, he whispered into my hair. For what? For seeing me, for saving me, for being you. I smiled against his shirt. Thank you for coming back. We stood there in my small restaurant, surrounded by the smell of cornbread and collard greens, holding each other as the Memphis night settled around us. And I thought about my mama's words. Food ain't just about filling stomachs. It's about feeding souls. She was right. I'd fed a stranger's body that August afternoon. But somehow, In the months that followed, we'd fed each other's souls. 1 year later, the second location of Latoya's Kitchen opened in North Memphis on a warm Saturday morning. The lines stretched around the block, not just hungry people, but reporters, local politicians, community leaders, and Marcus's entire foundation team. I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Marcus beside me, both of us holding oversized scissors and grinning like fools. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." We cut the ribbon together, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Inside, the restaurant gleamed, new booths, updated kitchen, a mural on the wall painted by local youth showing community hands passing plates of food. But in the corner, preserved behind glass like a sacred artifact, was the original table from the first location. The one by the window where Marcus first sat, where our story began. A plaque beneath it read, "Where Hunger Met Hope, August 2023. After the ceremony, after the photos and the speeches and the congratulations, Marcus and I finally found a quiet moment alone in the back office. "We did it," I said, leaning against the desk. "You did it," he corrected, pulling me close. "I just wrote checks." "You did a lot more than that." He kissed my forehead. "We make a good team." "Yeah," I whispered. "We do." He reached into his pocket. "There's one more thing." My heart stopped. "Marcus." He pulled out a small velvet box. "Latoya Johnson," he said, dropping to one knee. "I know this is fast. I know people will say we're crazy. But I've lived enough life to know that when you find something real, you don't let it go." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring, elegant but not ostentatious. "Perfect. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down my face. "You're proposing in the back office of a soul food restaurant. I'm proposing in the place where everything changed," he said softly. "Where you taught me that wealth isn't about what you have, it's about what you give. Where you showed me that love isn't transactional. Where you saved my life by giving me a plate of food." I dropped to my knees in front of him, cupping his face in my hands. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into a kiss that tasted like joy and tears and promise. When we finally pulled apart, both of us laughing and crying, he whispered, "Thank you for feeding me that day." I smiled. "Thank you for being hungry." 2 years later, from Latoya's Kitchen to Cole Foundation headquarters to 6 cities and counting. From one woman's kindness to a movement feeding thousands. From a chance encounter to a love story that proves grace changes everything. But if you ask Latoya and Marcus what mattered most, they'll tell you the same thing. It was never about the money. It was never about the fame. It was about a plate of food given freely. It was about seeing someone when they felt invisible. It was about choosing kindness when the world had made them both hard. Because that's the thing about feeding people, you never know who you're really nourishing. Sometimes you feed someone's body. Sometimes you feed their soul. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you feed each other's hearts. And that hunger, the hunger for connection, for grace, for being truly seen, that's the deepest hunger of all. The end. If you enjoyed this story, remember, small acts of kindness create ripples we can't always see. You never know whose life you might change with a simple gesture. Feed someone today with food, with kindness, with grace.